Many of you sent in your memories of VE Day, and we'd like to thank all those of you who've been in touch. They give a real sense of the bittersweet emotions of the time. The war was still being fought against Japan, of course. Many had loved ones who would not be coming home, and others had families still abroad.
On VE Day, it was my 12th birthday and very exciting. After the dark days of war, VE Day was such a surprise, and I think it must have been quite late in the evening when Mum said, "Come on, we'll go down the high street," because I remember the lights blazing, which we weren't used to. I just remembered how exciting it all was, seeing crowds and crowds of people dancing, singing, hugging. My dad was enlisted very early during the war, and I used to love getting his letters. He knew that I'd started to play the piano, and I remember this very clearly. In every letter he said, "Keep up the practice, my dear. I'm looking forward to hearing you when I come home." So I couldn't give it up even if I'd wanted to.
Thanks for the memory.
I remember him coming home very well, yes, very excited. We were so used to him being away, it was going to be strange when he came home again.
I was stationed at Finmere in Buckinghamshire doing my operational training flying mosquitoes. There was a Thanksgiving service in the camp church. At midday, everyone was given 36 hours leave, so I decided to go home to North Wales and visit my parents. This entailed a 17-mile cycle ride to Banbury to catch the train, and after several changes, I finally got home. I then discovered there was a victory dance on in the local parish hall, so I decided to take my sister along with me. She was in the Land Army, and we had a marvellous time there. Oh, everyone was absolutely highly delighted that it was the end of the war in Europe, but obviously some of us had misgivings about the future. We realised we had to go to Japan, and that would be a different kettle of fish.
During the war, a lot of the time I worked in the factory where they made spare parts. Well, on VE Day, as soon as we heard the news, everybody was excited, and we all came home from work early, and the RAF station organised a dance. They sent vehicles to Tutbury and surrounding villages, and that is where I met my future husband, Ken. My sister and I got married together. We had a double wedding. One of the main reasons for that was because things being rationed, particularly the food. Every wedding anniversary I do think of VE Day. We were married for 65 years.
For the 60th anniversary of VE Day, Songs of Praise visited St Giles Church in Camberwell in London. And here's a hymn from that programme. As we began to sense victory, our allies in Europe were still struggling. After 4 years of occupation and a particularly harsh winter, 3 million people in the Netherlands were starving. Annika Heslem, who also wrote to us, was one of them.
We call it the hunger winter. 20,000 people died in the western part of Holland. It was just terrible. It was awful. We had rabbits, we had the goat, but they were confiscated, you see. The Nazis took everything. In the end, we had tulip bulbs, took the middle out, that I think was poisonous probably, I don't know, and sugar beet. But my father and mother, they had great faith, and they kept saying, God will look after us.
Their prayers were answered, even though Holland was still occupied by the Germans. 10 days before VE Day, the RAF led the Allied forces in carrying out the world's first humanitarian food drop. Maurice Snowball was on the mission.
Somebody in the air ministry knew his Bible and decided to call it Operation Manna, food from heaven. You had to stay at 500 feet. Any higher, the Germans could fire.
My mother shouted us, come outside, come outside. Well, we didn't. We heard the aeroplanes going. Well, we always used to hide when aeroplanes going. You suddenly saw airplanes going very, very low and very slow. And she says, it's food that's coming, food. You wouldn't believe it. It was fantastic.
There wasn't many air crew weren't in tears at what they'd seen, because we got some idea of the suffering that they'd gone through.
The mission has never been forgotten in Holland, and in this special anniversary year, the Dutch government has created a floral display at Lincoln Cathedral, close to the home of RAF Bomber Command. It depicts the parachuted supplies dropped by Operation Manna, so where better to bring together Annika and Maurice for the first time.
I live in England, I live in Cambridge actually, and I've lived here for 50 years. And to meet somebody who actually saved my life and my family's life will be absolutely wonderful. Hey!
Oh,
I
hello.
am meeting the man
Yes,
of
hello.
all. The person
very
who
much.
saved my life.
Thank you
Yes.
very,
very much.
Thank you.
I'll hold your arm.
was-
After 70 years.
Well, maybe I waved to you without knowing it.
Yeah, perhaps you did.
Yeah, we waved to the crowds on the ground.
Yes. Look, I can show you a tile made in Holland after the war.
Oh, yes.
And it shows you your aeroplane.
Yes,
And you can see
yes.
Morris sitting there, perhaps. I don't know who it was.
I would be sitting on this side of the...
On that side,
yes.
And
Next
this
to
is
the
the
pile.
food being dropped.
What is the wording?
It says voedsel, that means food.
Yes.
Vrede means peace.
Yeah.
And vrijheid means freedom. Yeah.
Tell us what it was like the first time that you got chocolate, because a lot of the children had never seen
No,
chocolate.
I've never seen it. It wasn't a bar of chocolate. My mother had this black lump in her hand. She says, oh, we're all going to have a bit of it.
Yes. It was a time when people found out that there was a God
It was.
and that he was looking after them.
He was
you know.
looking after them.
Yes.
Everything would be okay
Yes.
in the end.
Yeah. But we didn't know when we dropped the food, we were also dropping seeds of friendship. So it's great to meet you
And you.
and to know that
Yes, right,
somebody
yeah.
could talk about it.
Talked about, yes. It never leaves you.
Yes.
My heart is filled